Hey guys, I'm Tammy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I've got 10 sewing patterns that are going to be perfect for summer, especially if you're a beginner. Thank you to Brother for sponsoring today's video. Let's get right into it, and the first category is going to be dresses. So the first one is a sheared dress pattern, and this is the one from my new book, So Simple. So the sizing runs from sizes 6 to 32, and it has a max bust of 57 inches, a max waist of 50 inches, and a max hip of 60 inches. The fun thing about this pattern is it has two options for you to sew, so you can either sew the dress version or you can sew the top version. On the dress version, there's actually a ruffle at the bottom, so you can throw it on. It feels really floaty when you're moving around, and it kind of blows nicely in the wind. So one thing I love about this pattern is the fact it has adjustable tie straps, so you can just put them on and literally just tie them to your preference. It makes it so easy to put on. The cool thing about this pattern is it has a sheared bodice at the front. If you don't know what that is, it's basically where you turn woven fabric into stretch fabric, and how you do that is you basically sew lines of shearing, and what that is you basically get elastic thread and put that in your bobbin, and then when you sew lines of elastic onto your fabric, it will naturally stretch as you pull it apart. And in general, if you're sewing and you find you really struggle to get the fit right on patterns, things like shearing is so useful because it will just stretch naturally to your shape of your body. In general, when you're sewing things with shearing, it's really useful to use fabrics like cotton, linen or viscose, and basically you just want to use lightweight fabric, so when you're putting it over your body, it's nice and easy to stretch. I personally am such a fan of sheared dresses. I wear them all the time in summer because they're so easy to throw on, so I knew I had to include it in my book because it's a very beginner friendly pattern to try, and it allows you to sew something that's more fluctuating with your weight. The next dress pattern is the Lois dress by Tote Patterns. The sizing on this pattern runs from sizes 6 to 16, and it has a max bust of 41 inches, a max waist of 37 inches, and a max hip of 45 inches. So I actually remember making the Lois dress as one of the first patterns I started when I was sewing, and I remember it was the first thing that I sewed that actually turned out really well when I was using a sewing pattern. So it's a really good beginner friendly pattern, although I do think they class it as an intermediate. It basically has a V neckline bodice and an A-line skirt, and I personally love the way the sleeves are finished with that cuff detail. It's really pretty and easy to wear. I've actually made quite a few Lois dresses, and I know it has a side zip at the side for you to slip it on and off, so that's the only thing. If you're sewing this pattern and you're not that confident with zips yet, you definitely have to put one in the side just so it slips over your head nice and easy. One thing to bear in mind as well is I remember sewing it in more drapey fabric, so things like viscose or crepe, because you basically want it to be fluid when you put it over your body. If you use fabrics that are too stiff and rigid like a cotton, it might not drape as nicely and flow when you're wearing it. The next dress pattern is the Margo Pinafore, and that is one of my own sewing patterns. It's on my website and I'll leave a link down below. The size chart is the same as my other patterns, so it goes from sizes 6 to 32 with a max bust of 57 inches, a max waist of 50 inches, and a max hip of 60 inches. So this pattern actually has two variations that you can sew with it. So you can either sew the deep V neckline variation or you can sew the square neck variation. Personally, I actually made the V-neck variation more for like autumn winter wear, but it would definitely work in summer. But I find the square neck variation, that one is perfect for summer. So I made this version not that long ago, and I went on holiday a couple of weeks ago to France, and I wore this dress, and oh my god, it was absolutely perfect for walking around. I personally like to be really comfortable when I'm walking around. I don't want something with like too much of a deep V or a really short skirt. So I found this one was the perfect combination of looking really cute but feeling really comfortable. So to give a bit more of a fitted look at the top, there is side bust darts, and the top is actually fully lined, and I give really clear instructions on how to do this. In this pattern, I actually make you sew the burrito method, and honestly it finishes the inside so beautifully. For this dress pattern, you definitely want to use fabrics like cotton, linen or viscose, just something with a bit more of a weight to it. I actually do prefer sewing it as well in heavier weight fabrics, so things like corduroy and denim. It works perfectly in this pattern. So I made this version in the denim square neck, and oh my god, it works so well. I actually use my brother's sewing machine right behind me. That is the Brother Innovis VQ4. It's honestly such a beast. It's amazing. I actually always get really scared of sewing with denim fabric or really thick fabric in case it breaks my machine, but honestly that one, it's so advanced, and when I put anything in that's thick, it literally just glides over. It doesn't even flinch when I'm sewing something as thick as denim. And I always get asked what sewing machine I have, and I always recommend this one. It's definitely more pricey. It's an advanced sewing machine, but I'll leave a link down below to the exact model I have because really it's such a good machine. Just bear in mind when you're cutting out the lining of this pattern, you definitely want to use something lightweight lightweight. So in this example, I use denim on the outside, but on the inside, I use a really lightweight linen to be the lining for the top. Let's get into the next category, which is tops. So one of my favorite top patterns I've already been wearing so much this summer is this tie front top pattern in my book So Simple. So it's this one right here. I absolutely love the model we chose to model this, and it's such a good pattern. So the sizing on this one is the exact same as all my other patterns. So there's a max bust of 57 inches and a max waist of 50 inches. If you are looking for a range of projects that you want to get in one single book, I really recommend my book So Simple. It comes with 15 sewing patterns, and it just basically means you have loads of things to try in one single book. So if you're a beginner, this is going to be such a great pattern because it's actually a tie front detail at the front. So you basically can tie it and adjust it to how tight you want it to be. So there's no tricky fastenings for you to handle. You can literally just tie it up and be as tight or as loose as you want. It's such a great pattern to wear and it works so well for summer. The top is fully lined, so it gives it a really professional finish on the inside. And there's also back darts at the shoulder and the back waist just to give a bit more of a fitted look. I personally like sewing this in more drapier, softer fabrics like viscose, linen, or even cotton. You definitely want to use something that has a bit more fluidity so it's not too structured when you're wearing it. The next top pattern on my list to sew this summer is the Rothwell Top by Stitch Witch patterns. So this one runs from sizes 0 to 34 and it has a max bust of 59 inches and a max waist of 51 inches. So it has a really cute kind of crop top vibe that feels really sweet for summer. So it feels also a bit like a modern corset as well in that type of shape. It has a deep front neckline at the front and it also has decorative front ties as well as a tie back closure. I just think it looks so pretty, and you can actually sew with some fabrics with a bit more structure. So things like cotton, linen, things like gingham or poplin, and it just gives it a really sweet touch. I actually think fabric with a bit more structure would be better suited for this pattern. I've personally sewn her patterns before and I really like how she breaks down different instruction techniques, so I definitely recommend this pattern. The last top pattern is a free one and it's the Etty Camisole pattern on my website. I'll leave a link down below on where you can get it. The sizing for this one runs the exact same in all my other patterns. So it's sizes 6 to 32 with a max bust of 57 inches and a max waist of 50 inches. I have seen so many people sew this pattern honestly across the world, and it always makes me feel so weird to know that people absolutely love my sewing patterns. I always get so emotional when I get messages from people telling me this is their first pattern they ever sewed, and it just gives them a lot of confidence to not only get started with sewing but also try different patterns that they're not really used to. I feel like when I first started sewing, a lot of the patterns I did try were things like Vogue or Butterick, like the big four sewing patterns. It took me quite a while to kind of venture out into indie ones. To know it gives people confidence to kind of branch out when it comes to sewing patterns makes me feel so happy. So the Etty Camisole has a scallop neckline detail at the front, and then the back is just a straight neckline. The scallop detail is definitely a bit more trickier to sew, but I have really clear instructions showing you how to actually sew it. The bust is fully lined, so it has a really professional finish on the inside, and it just means you can finish the neckline and the armholes really neatly. It comes together pretty quickly, and you're going to want to use fabrics that are a bit more lightweight, so things like cotton or even things that are a bit drapey like linen, viscose or crepe. The next category is bottoms. So I came across the sports shorts pattern by the Friday Pattern Company a while ago, and I really want to sew them. So the sizing for this runs from sizes 0 to 32 and it has a max waist of 53 inches and a max hip of 63 inches. This is a free shorts pattern, although I do think you can pay what you want to get it. So if you want to contribute to her work, you can also pay a small fee. It has an elastic drawstring waist as well as pockets, and there's also really pretty kind of bias bound edging all along. I've honestly been wanting to sew these, so hopefully I can get around to it this summer because they just look so cute and casual and kind of easy to slip on. For fabrics, you're probably going to want to sew it in lightweight fabrics like cotton, linen or viscose. Basically nothing that's going to be too stiff and heavy because you want it to be quite comfy when you're wearing it. Techniques like doing a drawstring waist and the bias bound edging can be a bit difficult if you're completely new to sewing, but I looked through the instructions and they look really easy to follow. The next bottoms pattern is the Amelia skirt, which is one of my own sewing patterns. I personally think if you are a complete beginner and you've never sewn any piece of clothing before, this is going to be your pattern to try. The sizing runs from sizes 6 to 32 with a max waist of 50 inches and a max hip of 60 inches. The pattern has a really simple elasticated waistband around the front and the back, and it makes it so simple and easy to sew. It also features gathered tiers on the skirt, so when you're moving around it swishes really nicely in the wind. So because of the elastic waistband as well, if you are really nervous of making things fit your body, it's such a great thing to sew because elastic will naturally just stretch to your body and there's no really fit required. I honestly have so many of these in my wardrobe wardrobe. I just like really easy gathered skirts that you can just throw on, especially on holiday when you don't want to wear something too heavy, and it just makes it so easy to throw on and just comfy to wear. Again, with the theme of all the other patterns, you want to use lightweight fabric like cotton, linen or viscose, anything that just moves really freely in the wind, so when you're walking around in it, it's not going to be too stiff. The last category is accessories. So this pattern is the beach cover up pattern from my book So Simple. I absolutely love this pattern. I know you're going to love it too. So again, this one runs in sizes 6 to 32 with a max bust of 57 inches and a max waist of 50 inches. It just makes a perfect pattern to throw on when you kind of want to protect your arms from the sun. So the pattern comes in 2 lengths, so you can either sew it with the tie front detail at the shorter version, or you can sew the longer version that just flows around in the wind. Again, if you're someone that really hates getting the fit right on garments, things like this are great to sew because they're more oversized and they're a bit more forgiving because you can just throw it on and layer it over different pieces. I actually have it on my to-do list to sew this exact pattern, the longer version one, but add little tassels on the arms and on the hem of it, so it's going to be such a cute summery beach outfit. I actually have step-by-step instructions in the book showing you exactly how to sew this outfit, and it just makes it really easy to follow, especially if you are a complete beginner. Again, you definitely want to use fabrics that are much more lightweight, even things that have a bit more drape to it. So I personally would use things like viscose or crepe. You can definitely use fabrics like cotton and stuff like that. It will just give it a bit more of a structured appearance when you're wearing it. So the last summary pattern I want to share, especially if you're a complete beginner, is this trendy tote bag pattern. Sometimes I feel like we all need a palette cleanser or a really easy project to sew just to get us back in the swing of things, and I personally find things like tote bags can be the perfect project to sew. Whenever I'm on holiday, I personally love to have a tote bag on me because I find it easier to walk around on the beach with. I personally love the contrast detail on this tote bag. The strap is a different color and I find it just elevates a simple tote bag into something a bit more. I can personally sew it in about 45 minutes and it just makes such a nice project to sew, especially if you want something wearable really quickly. Now, when you're sewing tote bags, you actually want to use more medium weight fabric instead of something lightweight. So I would actually choose fabrics like heavyweight cotton, quilting cotton, linen, denim, anything like that that just has a bit more structure, even canvas. And it just means when you're wearing the tote bag and putting stuff inside it, it doesn't droop down to the bottom. So this one in the book, the one that I sewed, that's actually in a white denim, and then the fabric for the straps is, I think it's a heavyweight linen, and I paired them together and it worked so beautifully. So I definitely recommend more heavyweight fabrics if you're sewing the tote bag in this book. I hope you enjoyed my roundup of 10 summery sewing patterns for you to try, especially if you're a beginner. I feel like walking around on holiday wearing things you've sewn is honestly the best feeling ever. So I hope these patterns give you a bit of inspiration on what to sew on your next holiday. I'll make sure to leave a link to all the patterns I talked about in this video in the description box below. So definitely let me know which one was your favorite, and I'll see you in the next one.